Thanks for joining us in this episode number 17 of SRE Practitioner Series. I'm your host, Suresh GP from TaUB Solutions. I'm extremely pleased to have today our guest, Mr. Nivead Appukuttan, who's the Director of SRE for Cloud Platforms at JPMorgan Chase, going to help us to share his insights with his experience around site reliability engineering. Thanks, Nivead, for taking time today and sharing some time with us in terms of your experience with site reliability engineering. I hope you're doing well.
Suresh, good morning, and thanks for having me today. I'm excited to join this platform and share my thoughts with your viewers.
Excellent. So one of the things that was very interesting when we had our initial chat, Nivead, was a lot of times when we talk about site reliability engineering, people from the development background seem to get an edge over the other people. So there is always a race to build that SRE capability from a development background towards moving to an SRE. But you've been in part of managing a large scale operations. And one of the things that, and I've been spending my 10 years in operations, I feel that the operations team also deserves to be an SRE. So this topic today for our theme for today's podcast is, how can we help the operations team to transform to be from a traditional support to an SRE, right? So that's the theme for today. Now, let's first understand from your perspective, if you ask, I mean, you have been in that experience, if someone asked you, what does it take for a traditional support to move to an SRE? What would be your immediate thoughts? Is it doable? Is it tough? Is it going to be a roller coaster ride? What is your immediate feeling to that episode?
Okay, this is a very good topic to start with because, to say that definitely this is possible.
Right.
And I'm an example of that. I started my career as a system administrator and then transitioned to an SRE. And I also got some opportunities to work with certain companies I worked earlier to build SRE teams from scratch and also transforming some of the traditional operations teams into site reliability engineering teams, right? So certainly that is possible. And I think it should worth a try because the value of system knowledge this traditional operations team brings into is invaluable, right? You should definitely make use of that, right? But the thing is, like, as we transition into an SRE, usually all this transition plan focus around technology, like, starting getting people into coding, learning Python and many other things.
Correct.
But my take here is like, it is more than just technology.
Correct.
So the SRE is not just a technology that you can implement, but it involves, if I have to say that, it includes three things majorly.
Okay.
That number one is technology, of course, a lot of technical changes involved. And then processes. So there's a lot of processes, practices that you need to implement to part of this modernization there. And the third, the most important thing is the mindset. How you do things. See, you may be doing the same thing, managing a large scale infrastructure or an application, but how you do it, that mindset need to be changed a lot.
Right.
So that also plays an important part. So when all these things come together, technology, process, and this mindset, then a real SRE team is born there. Right?
Excellent point. Now, one question on that, just as a start, because I'm very keen on that mindset. Do you really think that the operations team is aspiring to be an SRE, or there are only few people who will move into that direction? So what is your experience managing some of these operations teams? Are they kind of skeptical about taking up this SRE role, or?
Not very well. So in my experience, at least work with people who were very enthusiastic and they were very keen on learning and moving into a SRE title. See, some of these people were stuck in operations or system admin because they did not get enough opportunities. Right. See, the thing is, like, say, when you are doing system, when we say the traditional operation, it is mostly by saying, like, doing everything manually, repeatedly, which creates toil, right? So most of these people, the system administrators or system engineers, are stuck in this toil. They don't have enough time to learn, adapt the new things in there.
Correct.
So once you give them sufficient training, coaching, and all, I think we can be successfully transitioning them into an SRE.
Correct. No, I think it's a very valid point that you say, because it's also about the belief in themselves, saying that we have done that, and the wisdom of production that you talked about, your system knowledge that you have, has going to be very important for people to believe that they can do it, right? Because sometimes, as a part of an operations team, I feel that it's a thankless job. People just say you are keeping the lights on, but in reality, they probably have a thick-skinned nature that they can handle any of these escalations to be on that aspect. So,
right. The people who have been firefighting, like, for the applications, especially for legacy application, I must say that, like,
right,
they see beyond all the run books and playbooks. There's a lot of
right,
institutional knowledge that reside with this traditional operation people. Like,
correct,
given a problem, they get the signal immediately and they can go and
correct,
fix things, right?
correct,
So just
correct,
that doing it manually. So you
correct.
equip them with the right tools and support, they can do magic as transforming to an SRE.
Sure. So one of the things that we have seen, and you talked about a little about this, is a transformation, right? Now, this is, if I want a company, and a lot of our viewers are practicing SRE, they are in different maturity models. So they want to understand, if organizations want to shift from a traditional production support operations team to an SRE, what would be their objectives of the transformation? I mean, what do they need to keep in mind when they need to define something called as an SRE transformation?
Okay. Yeah, so you said it, like the first most important thing is to define an objective, right? I have seen many places where transition happen just to, like, because it's a SR is a buzzword, it's
Correct.
infiltrated,
Correct.
right? You go to any operations conference, SR is took as an allied group.
Correct.
So people wanted to do it that way, right? So that's actually not the right thing to do, but rather you should understand why you wanted to do this transition. Do you really wanted to do it? If yes, what is some of this reason? Write it down yourself. Define your problem. So the reasons is your current problem that you cannot solve with your current operating model, right?
Right. Right.
So those problems are your reasons for your transformation into the SRE.
Right.
Right. And what do you want to achieve there as an SRE? Write down that objectives. That is, of course, solving all these current problems, right?
Right.
And what are you going to achieve there? That's going to be your objective.
Correct.
And so you have your why, your reasons on why are you transitioning, then your what is like the objective that you want to achieve. And more importantly, you need to define the how part also.
Right.
Because how you put this into action also matters really.
Correct.
To
Correct.
play the real SRE there.
So you did mention about these.
Define.
Yeah. So you did mention about these 3 points very clearly. Start with the why, because once you find out the why, the how becomes automatically easier. But it's also about the whole journey map, right? So from your current state to a desirable state, how do we go about achieving that? Now, many times, Nivead, this transformation cannot be done just by operations alone. So how do we bring that the rest of the organization as part of the cohort? How has been that experience when we know you try to uplift the morality of the operations team, but then you still have to have those other moving part come there and synergize. So how has that been a challenge?
Yeah, so very, very important point in here, right? So because mostly when we plan, the SRE transition plan is made around the SRE team itself, which is wrong.
Correct.
Because the SRE thing is like, SREs is going to change a lot of things, not just for themselves, but just for that whole thing, the ecosystem, like, which includes the product, the infrastructure, some of the product decisions also made, the SREs has to influence and change. For example, it's like, SRE team is responsible for the reliability of the product or platform that you're operating. And if you're not giving them enough authority to implement the error budget is one of the key philosophies behind SRE, right?
Correct.
And you can define what is an error budget and how it to be done. But implementation of that error budget needs SRE to given some level of autonomy.
Correct.
So you need that buy-in from the senior leadership to have SRE authority to implement certain measures to ensure the reliability of the platform. So another example is like, so you need to get the stakeholder commitment from all the people, leadership, your partner team, your developer counterparts, right? Because they also need to understand this, the team is going to operate differently and implement different things. For example, SLO, SLI, another key things. So that need to be defined with a collaborative effort with your developer partners who know the product well, what are the key signals, and get their buy-ins also to say that, after a certain point, you define a measure, the system is considered as wrong, and the SRE may have to take some actions in there.
Right.
Another important thing sometimes, is you need to work with the product team, because when you develop the product, right, reliability sometimes is not a first-class citizen there.
Correct.
You will define a lot of features and things to lure
Absolutely.
your customers, but to operate in a reliable environment, your reliability, you'll write it down as an NFR, non-functional requirement,
Correct.
and should be baked into the design from the initial stage itself.
Correct.
So SRE should be given enough influence to talk to product team, have them brought into the new model where the architecture should consider enough budget for reliability and resilience.
So I think you made a great point. And I tell people, Nivead, that your backlog should not only have functional features, but also your non-functional features as well as toil. So for me, my definition of done or should be that you have all these 3 tick boxes, which is the functional requirements or the features perspective, the reliability aspects that you talk about in terms of NFRs, but also toil, that everybody need to contribute for every sprint. So that way, there is a holistic thought process across the value chain to see how we can make that work. Yeah?
Of course, because we have a rush always to roll out features faster, compromising on the reliability, which is a wrong thing. That creates toil, and later the product itself will be unmanageable.
Correct. So let's get into that stakeholder commitment. See, one of the problems that I've had when I look at a lot of these companies is I'm not sure whether all leaders understand whether SRE is valuable, right? To be honest, as I run my own business, I understand I don't really care whether it's DevOps, SRE, IT service management. All I want is that business growth, profitability, and market share. So how do you really educate some of your key stakeholders at a leadership team on why SRE is important? I mean, any thoughts on that?
Surely. So that is where initially when you define the why itself, it is very important to define what are the problems we have, and how this problem impact the product, and how the problems of the product is going to impact the customers.
Correct.
And that is going to impact your revenue as well.
Correct.
Right. For example, Amazon, for example, they have a measure saying if your checkout page is delayed by X microseconds, there is a chance that you can lose so much of dollars.
Correct.
And that is their SLO. And that they define that SLI there.
Correct.
So with that thing, see, you invest on the reliability, SRE teams, and a resilient infrastructure and platform, so that your product will be reliable. Your customers will be happy with your product. So it is not just an infrastructure problem, but all the reliability is directly tied up to the customer happiness.
Correct.
And to your business, right? So that is what the leadership need to be convinced about.
Right. No, absolutely right. Now, as you start to get these commitments, one of the problems is about defining your SLOs, right? Because this is a very sticky topic where your development team is still going to focus on feature velocity, and your operations team is looking at response time and resolution time. For me, the bigger challenge is to make them move away from their traditional metrics towards SLO. So how has been that challenge when you try to push people from their traditional metrics of deployment frequency, your change failure rate, your MTTD, lead time, towards SLOs? Is there an easy way that people understand this, both from a development and operation standpoint, or there is a lot of tussle to get into that?
So I take it this way, because when we have the traditional operation, traditional operation mostly was around small scale protection things.
Right.
See, our teams, where we used to monitor CPU, memory metrics of every single system in here.
Correct.
So in the current scale where things are running, large production scale infrastructure, it is highly impractical that we have personnel assigned to look into every single metrics and alerts coming.
Correct.
Rather, it should be a holistic way to understand, is some of this breaks, is it going to impact your system's reliability, right? That is what you're looking into here. Now, the easiest way to convert this is convert the business objective into SLOs, right? So you need to have that conversation with leadership, product managers, your developers to define what is the business objective of this product that you're giving up.
Right.
See, this is like a measure of satisfaction of your customers.
Correct.
See, if you're giving a website to customers or a mobile app, how many seconds it can take to load before the customer will close that window?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So if it's going to take a few seconds and before that people are closing, you're not doing business there.
Correct.
Right. So that's a measure of your customer satisfaction converted to be an SLO, SLI.
Correct.
Right. So now how you will define that, it can be like, requests per second or the latency. So that way, it is a win-win for everyone.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are measuring the business thing. It's not just something SRE wanted to monitor or measure. Rather, we are looking into ensure that our business is successfully continuing.
Yeah, very, very true. I think you rightly said that we need to start with the business objectives, because a lot of times I think we have this watermelon syndrome where everything looks green outside from an SLA standpoint, but the customer is bleeding red because we have not really defined that business KPIs in terms of number of orders processed, as you rightly said, the checkout time, if there is a delay, how much is the business impact in terms of dollar loss, or an unplanned outage in terms of business impact, and the section of having people to understand what is the pain for the business is going to be important. Now, a lot of times, Nivead, people say that if you have a right team, we will do SRE great. But how do you build a right team? Is it kind of you get people from outside? Because a lot of times I've seen people are homegrown as an SRE within the same organization. So how do you build a right team to build an SRE capability or a function?
Right. So right team, it has a lot of definition if you go through it. So I'll tell my stick on this. Like, of course, when you're looking to build a new SRE function, okay, you can go into market, get experienced SRE to come and join you and start afresh. I mean, the good thing about bringing in people from externally seasoned SREs is that they have seen that and set the right mindset. And what is important is like they can bring in a fresh perspective on how you are running your things today. Right. At the same time, you should not completely ignore your current operating stuff for the same reason we discussed earlier.
Right.
They bring in, a huge amount of institutional knowledge that you cannot buy from market.
Absolutely.
They need to be there for that. Right. So I'd say that it's a mix of both, like, some external seasoned SRE hire and transformation of some of the existing system administrators into SRE. And it's also good to bring in some of the software engineers from the product side into the SRE team.
Right.
And a combination of all this thing will bring the right SRE team is what I believe.
Yeah. So,
and another thing, because we were talking about transition, so I just want to bring up this one point also. So when we do the transition, like, we are letting the traditional operations system administrators to move into SRE. So we should not give a free pass in there, right? I'm not saying block people from doing it or conduct an exam or not saying any of that, but we need to give them sufficient time for training. As I said earlier, I've been a system admin fighting toil and things like, there's little time to learn. So you need to allocate time for them to learn, right? And rather than just learning, we should give them mentorship also.
Right.
Pairing up them with software engineers and seasoned SREs so they understand what is the value of SRE. Because when you practically see the benefits of the transitioning SRE, as an example, you have a toil that the system administrator is fighting for. Have them automate it, pairing up with a software engineer.
Right.
And have them see the benefits that, oh, my work is taken over, my workload is taken over by that automation. So I can do something better now. Right. So that feel will motivate them to do more and more kind of stuff. So
I think that's a very good point you talked about, called as pairing, because that's a part of, we know about the trauma of both the person, how they're working. And it's also builds in a lot more good collaboration, because you know what? They are the best buddies who are going to help you to navigate. So there's a sense of mutual respect that comes in when you do a pairing, right? Because they start to understand each other better. And you also mentioned a very important part of creating time for them for a dedicated training. Now, I know a lot of companies that I coach and consult globally have a particular days, let's say 5 days a year, there has to be a calendar days of training and other stuff. But in your opinion, Is this e-learning a better option for people to learn, or do they still look at a learning from an instructor or some practice? How is this whole training and development era changed, in your opinion, to be more effective for people to understand and apply things?
Okay, it's more of a personal choice, but I'd see that a lot of this training is changed, and certainly we should leverage e-learnings and videos available, because that exposes you into a whole different world.
Right.
You can get trained from, if you're in India, Bangalore, and you can get trained from someone in San Francisco. It's a great opportunity, right?
Correct.
You get to see how things are working in a through world, and also sometimes, yes, instructor sitting next to you has a different experience also, they can clear your doubts, ask questions, pair up. So it could be a combination of all these things. And the most important thing is, we should not end with just throwing some training to them, right?
Right.
We should give them time, we should give them projects, we should give them mentorship. All these things should happen. Then only we can evaluate them, looking at what if they are ready or not.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
as I said earlier, after giving a training, we should not just transition people.
Right.
We should look into who are the people showing that SRE traits. Someone's just learning Python does not complete things. Does he get that mindset of automating things? Does he look into that system design in a different way to include reliability? So that SRE traits should be looked into, and the people who show that need to be transitioned into SRE. So that way, you're just not renaming people, but you get the right SREs coach trained, ready for you. And that will motivate the other system administrator also to take the same path, learn and transform into SRE.
Right. So which means it's a very important point of a grooming process. Like, you have to be at a certain level of merit for you to be groomed to be an SRE. Let's not put everybody who goes on the bandwagon of a training to say that, okay, now you have done the training, now you're all getting to that old part.
Absolutely. We're just renaming the team in that case, right? So that's not the right thing. Yeah.
Right. So in fact, that's a good point that you raised, because one of the things that we have been doing with a lot of our companies that we do training, coaching, and consulting is that one of the companies that we work, they have a 100-day program of becoming an SRE practitioner. So which means that it's not just about the training. They have to look at the process, they have to look at tools, they have to look at technology, and they are given a project that they have to execute, prove themselves, then only they come and attend our SRE practitioner training.
Exactly. So that's the right thing to do.
Right, which is basically saying that it's a long stretch, but only when you are prepared for the grind, you can be an SRE, because SRE is not that going to be given to you in a platter. It has to be something that has to be acknowledged and worked upon.
It's a practice, it's a dedication, and you need to go through it.
So correct. That's the part. So let's get into the final aspect of building an SRE team to do that. Now, a lot of people I know, traditionally, you and I know, in the overall 22 years in the industry, a lot of system administrators who want to be SREs. So if they are wanting to start as part of an SRE, how would you help them to go through that particular journey of SRE?
Okay, sure. So a willingness to learn new technology is very much necessary, but not sufficient.
Right.
I mean, you need to have a lot more than technology. As I said earlier, right? You need to understand the processes. You need to understand the mindset and ready to embrace that change. Right. Along with the technical knowledge, it is critical to understand the philosophies of SRE, the methodologies, and developing the proper mindset. And you should always you need to have the mindset of looking problems as your opportunities. So SRE should not get tired of problems, but they take this and use it as an opportunity, bringing a solution to it, right? And you should be always ready to create tools. Do not sit down even if you have not a problem. You're managing things in large scale. Create tools to help you manage your platforms at scale.
Right.
So you can throw that tools and automation when things are even during an emergency.
Right.
So remember the saying, unless someone like you care a lot, nothing is going to get better.
Absolutely.
So take up chaos, solve it. That is an SRE.
That's a great thing that you talked about, because as a system administrator, sometimes I feel that I don't have an opportunity to move up the value chain. But based on your conversation that you're having today, with what we all heard from Nivead, that there is a great opportunity for SREs to the system administrators to become SREs and also live that dream, right? And I always believe, Nivead, is that do not discount your experience.
Yes.
Leverage this as part of an opportunity, but do not stick to the past for a long period of time, because sometimes we bask on our past laurels that we don't make a learn. So if you are able to look at the continuous learning, unlearning, and relearning, and if you're curious, like a curious little wonder kid, to looking at what's happening around, that will be a great opportunity for people to learn, equip themselves in that particular scheme of things, right? Thank you so much, Nivead, for your insights today of transforming a traditional production support operations team to an SRE. I'm sure our viewers would have loved to love to have heard your perspectives and insights. Do you think that this practitioner series helps other practitioners to get insights about this thing? What's your take on the SRE practitioner?
Sure thing. So as I said, so learning a couple of technologies does not alone create SRE. So I highly recommend this practitioner series and understanding that methodologies and philosophies behind SRE, and then build the right SRE thing in here. Yeah,
sure. Excellent. Thank you so much, Nivead. And our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode of SRE Practitioner Series with Nivead Appukuttan. Says dining in from California. And I hope to see you all in our next episode of SRE Practitioner Series. So keep watching, post your comments. If you have any questions, please do reach out. And Nivead, how can people who are aspiring to be an SRE get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'll just share my profile, LinkedIn profile, and email there.
Right.
So if someone is interested in connecting, please do. And I'll be able to more than help to mentor or help anyone who's looking forward to be an SRE.
Excellent. So that's the power of the community here. People are willing so much to share information and give information. So please take advantage of Nivead Appukuttan's experience and expertise on this one. And we look forward to seeing you all as a better SRE as we go through this particular journey. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Suresh. Nice speaking with you.